12-year-old Isaiah Washington burst through the hospital emergency room doors at 4:47 a.m., his clothes soaked from rain, his hands bleeding from climbing, clutching a silver-leafed plant like it was made of diamonds. "Please!" he screamed at the shocked nurse behind the desk. "Victoria Sterling, where is she? I have the cure! I have the cure!" Security guards rushed toward him, a dirty, homeless black kid yelling about cures in the middle of the night. They thought he was crazy, dangerous, someone to be removed. "Get your hands off me!" Isaiah shouted, tears streaming down his face. "She's dying right now! I walked 100 miles. I didn't come all this way to—" Then Isaiah saw him, Alexander Sterling, the billionaire pharmaceutical CEO, walking down the hallway like a ghost. His expensive suit was wrinkled. His eyes were red from crying. He looked like a man who'd already lost everything. Their eyes met, and in that moment, Alexander had to make an impossible choice. Trust a homeless child with a plant, or watch his daughter die. Can you imagine that moment? Everything you are as a person, as a parent, coming down to one impossible decision? But to understand how we got here, we need to go back to where it all began. 72 hours earlier, 8-year-old Victoria Sterling woke up in her bedroom that looked like a princess castle. Pink curtains, a canopy bed with silk sheets, toys she'd never even opened. Everything a little girl could want, except the one thing she needed most, to not be dying. Victoria had been sick for 3 years. Doctors called it Sterling-Meyer syndrome, a rare autoimmune disease so unusual it was named after the doctor who discovered it. Her own body was attacking itself, destroying her organs one by one. Her father, Alexander Sterling, owned one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world. He'd spent $50 million trying to save her. He'd flown in specialists from Switzerland, Japan, England. He'd funded research. He'd begged every doctor he could find. Nothing worked. And now, on this gray Monday morning, Dr. Patricia Morgan sat in Alexander's home office and said the words no parent should ever hear. "Mr. Sterling, Victoria's kidneys are failing. Her liver is shutting down. We've done everything we can, but—" Dr. Morgan's voice cracked. "You should prepare yourself. She has maybe 72 hours, 3 days at most." Alexander stared at the doctor like she was speaking another language. "No, that's not— We have treatments. We've tried every treatment," Dr. Morgan said gently. "Her body is rejecting everything. I'm so sorry." "Wait, I need to tell you something crucial about what was happening at that exact same moment, just 3 miles away. Because 2 stories were about to collide in the most unexpected way. Isaiah Washington sat under a bridge, reading a worn notebook by flashlight. The notebook had belonged to his grandmother, Rose Washington, and it was filled with drawings of plants, recipes for medicines, and handwritten notes about healing. His grandmother had been a healer in their community. People came to her when they couldn't afford doctors. She knew about plants, about old medicine that had been used for hundreds of years before pharmaceutical companies existed. But when Grandma Rose got sick 2 years ago, with the same disease Victoria Sterling had, nobody could help her. The experimental treatment that might have saved her cost $400,000. The Sterling Pharmaceutical Company made it. Alexander Sterling's company. Isaiah's family had $3,000 saved. The company said no. Insurance said no. Everyone said no. So Grandma Rose died. And Isaiah, who was 10 years old at the time, became homeless because there was no one left to take care of him. He'd been living on the streets for 2 years now, and every single day he was angry. Angry at rich people who had everything, while people like his grandmother died. Angry at pharmaceutical companies that cared more about money than lives. Angry at a world that was so unfair. But Grandma Rose had taught him something before she died. She'd made him memorize it, made him promise to remember. "Isaiah, baby," she'd said, her voice weak. "There's a plant called angel's breath. It grows in the redwood forest, way up in the mountains. My grandmother told me about it before she passed. It's rare and dangerous to get to, but it can cure almost any disease if it's given with a pure heart." "Why don't doctors use it?" 10-year-old Isaiah had asked. "Because nobody can patent it. Nobody can make money from it. So they pretend it doesn't work." Grandma Rose had squeezed his hand. "But it does work, Isaiah. It does. I'm too sick to make the journey anymore. But if someone young and strong enough could get it—" She'd smiled sadly. "They could save lives that people like me, people the rich folks don't care about." Little did Isaiah know. In exactly 3 hours, he would overhear something that would make him attempt the impossible. Isaiah spent most nights sleeping in hospital waiting rooms. They were warm, the bathrooms were clean, and usually no one bothered a kid if he looked like he was waiting for a family member. That night, he was curled up in a chair pretending to sleep when two nurses walked by talking. "Did you hear about the Sterling girl? Victoria? The billionaire's daughter? What about her?" "She's dying. 72 hours, maybe less. Same disease that's killed 6 people this year. Sterling-Meyer syndrome. Her dad owns a pharmaceutical company and even he can't save her." Isaiah's eyes snapped open. Sterling-Meyer syndrome. That was what killed his grandmother. The disease with no cure. The disease that only killed poor people because rich people could afford the experimental treatments that might slow it down. Except, this time, a rich girl was dying too, and all her father's money couldn't save her. Isaiah felt something strange in his chest. Not happiness, he'd never wished death on a child, but something like justice, fairness, proof that money couldn't fix everything. Then he thought about Grandma Rose's notebook, about the angel's breath plant, about the cure that pharmaceutical companies ignored because they couldn't make money from it. And Isaiah thought, what if? What would you do if you knew there might be a cure for someone dying, but getting it meant risking your own life? Isaiah snuck through the hospital until he found Victoria's room. It was on the top floor, the private wing where rich people got their own suites instead of regular rooms. He peeked through the window in the door. Victoria was asleep, surrounded by machines, looking so small in that big bed. Her skin was pale, her breathing was shallow. She looked exactly like his grandmother had looked those last few days, a little girl who didn't deserve to die. Isaiah knew what he had to do. It was crazy. It was probably impossible, but he had to try. He slipped into the room quietly. Victoria's eyes flickered open, unfocused from medication. "Who?" she whispered. "My name's Isaiah," he said quietly, kneeling beside her bed so they were at eye level. "I know you don't know me, but I know what you have. The same thing killed my grandma 2 years ago." Victoria's eyes focused a little. "They say I'm going to die too." "Not if I can help it," Isaiah said, his voice fierce. "My grandma told me about a plant that can cure this. It's far away and it's dangerous to get, but I'm going to get it. You just have to do one thing for me." "What?" Victoria asked. "Fight. For 3 more days. Can you do that? Can you fight for 3 days while I go get what you need?" Victoria looked at this strange boy who'd snuck into her room in the middle of the night, offering hope when everyone else had given up. And she did something she hadn't done in weeks. She smiled. "Okay," Victoria whispered. "I'll fight." In exactly 12 hours, Isaiah would begin a journey that would nearly kill him, but first he needed a plan. Isaiah spent the rest of the night in the hospital library, looking at maps on the public computers. The redwood forest was 100 miles away. He had no car, no money except $12 he'd been saving, no supplies. But he had his grandmother's notebook. He had her map showing where the angel's breath plant grew, and he had something that surprised him. He had hope. At dawn, Isaiah left the hospital and started walking. He had 3 days, 72 hours, and 100 miles to cover on foot, plus the dangerous forest to search once he got there. Actually, let me pause here because what Isaiah did next would be considered crazy by most people. He was 12 years old, planning to walk 100 miles through dangerous territory to find a plant that most people thought was just a legend. But sometimes, crazy is the only option left when everything else has failed. Isaiah walked along the highway shoulder, his thumb out for hitchhikers, though nobody stopped. Cars swerved around him like he was invisible. One driver rolled down his window and yelled, "Get a job!" at a 12-year-old kid. By noon, Isaiah had walked 15 miles. His feet hurt, he was hungry, and then the sky opened up. Rain poured down, soaking him instantly. Thunder crashed, lightning lit up the gray sky. Most people would have found shelter, would have given up, would have said this was a sign to stop. But Isaiah thought about Victoria in that hospital bed, about his grandmother, about all the people who died because they weren't rich enough to matter, and he kept walking. By nightfall, Isaiah had covered 30 miles. He slept under a bridge, shivering, using his backpack as a pillow. His stomach growled. His clothes were still wet. Every muscle ached. But when the sun came up on day 2, Isaiah got up and kept going. What happened on day 2 would test Isaiah in ways he never imagined. but it would also show him that maybe, just maybe, there were still good people in the world. Around noon on day 2, Isaiah was sitting on the side of the road, taking off his shoes to check his blistered feet when a pickup truck pulled over. An older Mexican man leaned out the window. His name tag said Miguel. "You okay, kid?" Isaiah was so tired he almost cried. "I'm trying to get to Redwood Forest. My friend is sick. I'm getting her medicine." Miguel looked at this skinny 12-year-old kid with bleeding feet and determination in his eyes. "Redwood Forest? That's 70 miles from here. You walking the whole way?" "If I have to," Isaiah said. Miguel was quiet for a moment. Then, "I lost my daughter 5 years ago. Leukemia. Couldn't afford the treatment that might have saved her." He looked at Isaiah. "What's your friend got?" "Sterling-Meyer syndrome." Miguel's face changed. "That's what my daughter had. They told us there was an experimental treatment, but our insurance wouldn't cover it. Cost 400 grand. We had nothing." "My grandma too," Isaiah said quietly. "Same disease, same price, same answer. That's why I'm doing this. There's a plant that can cure it, but pharmaceutical companies don't use it because they can't make money from it." Miguel stared at Isaiah for a long moment. Then he opened the passenger door. "Get in. We're going to get that medicine." Have you ever met a stranger who changed your life? Someone who appeared exactly when you needed them most? Miguel drove fast, telling Isaiah about his daughter Maria, about how he'd felt helpless watching her die, about how he'd been carrying that guilt for 5 years. "If what you're doing saves this girl," Miguel said, his voice thick with emotion, "then maybe Maria's death means something. Maybe it means you knew what to do." They reached the edge of Redwood Forest by evening. Miguel gave Isaiah his flashlight, a bottle of water, and his phone number written on a piece of paper. "You call me when you find that plant. I'll be right here waiting. And Isaiah, be careful. That forest. People get lost in there. People don't come back." Isaiah looked at the dark forest, then at the notebook in his hands, his grandmother's handwriting, her map, her belief that this plant was real. "I'll be back," Isaiah promised. Isaiah had 18 hours left before Victoria's 72 hours ran out, and he was about to enter a forest that even experienced hikers feared. What happened next would test everything Isaiah believed about courage, survival, and what it means to do the impossible. The Redwood Forest at night was like stepping into another world. Massive trees blocked out the moonlight. Strange sounds echoed from every direction. Isaiah's flashlight beam looked tiny and useless in all that darkness. But he had his grandmother's map, and he had Victoria's promise to fight. Isaiah walked for hours, following landmarks his grandmother had drawn. A split tree, a boulder shaped like a fist, a creek that ran uphill because of how the mountains sloped. Then, around midnight, Isaiah heard something that made his blood run cold. Howling. Close. Getting closer. Wild dogs. Or maybe wolves. Moving through the trees toward him. Isaiah ran. He didn't know where he was going. Just away from those sounds. He stumbled over roots, crashed through bushes, his flashlight bouncing wildly. He didn't see the cliff until it was too late. Isaiah's foot hit empty air. He fell forward, barely catching a tree root at the last second. He hung there, dangling over darkness, the flashlight falling away and disappearing into the black. He never heard it hit bottom. Isaiah's hands were slipping, his arms burned. Below him was nothing but darkness and death. And all he could think was, "Victoria. I promised Victoria." With everything he had, Isaiah pulled himself up, one hand over the other. His muscles screamed, his hands bled. But he pulled himself back onto solid ground and lay there, gasping, crying, but alive. Wait, because what Isaiah did next showed more courage than most adults will ever have to find. Instead of turning back to safety, he got up and kept going. Because a promise to a dying girl meant more than his own fear. Isaiah used the moonlight now, moving carefully, checking his grandmother's map by memory. He'd studied it so many times he could see it in his mind. The angel's breath plant grew near the old giant, a tree so big and old that Grandma Rose said it was there before America was even a country. At dawn on day 3, Isaiah found it, a tree so massive he couldn't see the top, and there, growing in a circle around its base, glowing silver in the morning light, was the angel's breath plant. Isaiah fell to his knees, crying with relief, and carefully picked 3 of the plants, wrapping them in his shirt exactly like his grandmother's notebook instructed. He'd done it. He'd actually done it. Now he just had to get back before Victoria's time ran out. But when Isaiah called Miguel from the forest edge using the phone number on that piece of paper, what Miguel told him made Isaiah's heart stop. "Miguel, I got it. I got the plant." "Isaiah, thank God. Listen to me. I've been listening to the news. The Sterling girl, they're saying she has maybe 8 hours left, maybe less. The hospital is preparing the family for... They're saying it's over. 8 hours. Isaiah was 100 miles away. Even if Miguel drove 90 miles an hour, they'd barely make it. "I'm at the forest entrance," Isaiah said. "Same place you dropped me off. Can you..." "I'm already on my way. Been driving up here every few hours just in case. I'll be there in 10 minutes. We're going to save her, Isaiah. We're going to make it." Isaiah sat on a rock at the forest's edge, clutching the angel's breath plants, praying they'd get there in time. Because after everything, the 100-mile walk, the storm, the wild dogs, the cliff, the sleepless nights, if they were too late, if Victoria died before he got there, Isaiah didn't know how he'd survive that. In exactly 2 hours and 43 minutes, Isaiah would burst through those hospital doors, covered in dirt and blood, clutching a plant that most people thought was a myth. And Alexander Sterling would have to make the choice that would change everything. Miguel's truck flew down the highway at 95 miles per hour, weaving through traffic like they were in a movie. Isaiah sat in the passenger seat, the angel's breath plants wrapped carefully in his shirt, his hands shaking. "How much time?" Isaiah asked for the 10th time. Miguel glanced at the clock. 6 hours, maybe less. We're going to make it, kid. We have to." But they both knew it would be close. Too close. Then, 20 miles from the hospital, Miguel's truck started making a horrible grinding sound. The engine light came on. The truck lurched, sputtered, and began losing speed. "No, no, no!" Miguel pounded the steering wheel. "Not now, come on!" The truck died completely on the side of the highway. Miguel tried to restart it 3 times. Nothing, just clicking sounds and the smell of burning oil. Isaiah felt his world collapsing. They were so close, 20 miles, but they might as well have been 1,000 miles away. "I'll run," Isaiah said, already opening the door. "I can run 20 miles, I have to..." "Kid, you can't run 20 miles in 6 hours. You're exhausted. You haven't eaten in 2 days. You'll collapse before..." "I have to try!" Isaiah screamed, tears streaming down his face. "I didn't come all this way to give up now. Victoria is dying. She trusted me." Miguel grabbed Isaiah's shoulder. "Wait, look." A police car was pulling up behind them, lights flashing. An officer stepped out, walking toward them. Miguel whispered to Isaiah, "Let me do the talking. Wait, because what happened next would restore Isaiah's faith that sometimes the system actually works. Sometimes the right person shows up at exactly the right moment." Officer Linda Martinez approached the truck, then stopped when she saw Isaiah's face, covered in dirt, scratches, dried blood, and desperation. "Everything okay here?" she asked, her hand instinctively moving near her radio. Miguel started to explain about the truck, but Isaiah couldn't wait. The words exploded out of him. "My name is Isaiah Washington. Victoria Sterling, the billionaire's daughter. She's dying at City General Hospital. She has maybe 6 hours left. I have the cure." He held up the plants with trembling hands. "I walked 100 miles to get this, through the redwood forest. My grandmother was a healer, and she told me about this plant called Angel's Breath, and it can cure Sterling-Meyer syndrome, but pharmaceutical companies don't use it because they can't make money from it. And I promised Victoria I would save her, and now the truck broke down and we're 20 miles away, and if I don't get there, she's gonna die thinking I abandoned her, just like everyone else abandoned her, and I can't let that happen." Isaiah was sobbing now, all the exhaustion and fear and desperation pouring out of him in one overwhelming wave. Officer Martinez stared at this 12-year-old kid who looked like he'd been through war, holding plants like they were the most precious things in the world. She'd heard about the Sterling case. Everyone had. The billionaire's dying daughter, the media circus, the tragedy that money couldn't fix. Officer Martinez made a decision that went against every protocol in her training manual. "Get in the car. Both of you. Now." Have you ever broken a rule because following it would let someone die? That's what Officer Martinez did next. Officer Martinez turned on her lights and siren and drove like she was chasing a dangerous criminal, except she was racing to save a life instead of take one. She radioed ahead. "This is Unit 47. I'm bringing in a possible treatment for the Sterling child. Clear a path to City General. This is urgent. Repeat, this is urgent." The dispatcher's confused voice crackled back. "Unit 47, did you say treatment for the Sterling case? Can you clarify?" "No time to clarify. Just clear the path. ETA 12 minutes. Miguel sat in the back seat, hands clasped like he was praying. Isaiah sat up front, clutching the plants, watching the clock on the dashboard tick down. 5 hours and 43 minutes left. 5 hours and 37 minutes left. 5 hours and 21 minutes left. "Come on, come on, come on," Isaiah whispered like a prayer. Officer Martinez ran red lights, took corners at speeds that made the tires scream, and cut the 20-mile journey down to 15 minutes. When City General Hospital came into view, Isaiah had never been so relieved to see a building in his entire life. Officer Martinez screeched to a stop at the emergency entrance. "Go! I'll park and explain everything to the chief later. Go save that girl!" Isaiah and Miguel ran through the sliding doors at 4:47 a.m., and that's when we caught up to where this story began. With Isaiah screaming for Victoria, security guards trying to stop him, and Alexander Sterling walking down that hallway looking like death itself. What happened in the next 5 minutes would determine not just Victoria's fate, but would challenge everything Alexander Sterling believed about medicine, money, and who deserves to be saved. Security guards had Isaiah on the ground, trying to wrestle the plants away from him. He was screaming, fighting, refusing to let go. "You don't understand. She's going to die. Let me go." Alexander Sterling walked up slowly, looking at this homeless black kid who was making a scene in his daughter's final hours. "What?" Alexander said, his voice cold with exhaustion and grief. "Is going on here?" The head security guard answered. "Sir, this kid broke in claiming he has some kind of cure for your daughter. We're removing him now. Should we call the police?" "The police brought me here," Isaiah shouted, "because what I have is real. My grandmother was a healer. This plant is called Angel's Breath, and it can cure Sterling-Meyer syndrome, the same disease that killed my grandma 2 years ago because your company charged $400,000 for treatment she couldn't afford. Your daughter doesn't have to die like my grandma did. Please, just look at it." Alexander's face went white. "What did you say your grandmother had?" "Sterling-Meyer syndrome, same as Victoria. Your company makes the experimental drug. We had $3,000. You said no. Insurance said no. Everyone said no. So she died." Isaiah's voice broke. "But before she died, she told me about this plant, and I walked 100 miles through the redwood forest to get it. I almost died. I almost gave up. But I promised Victoria I would save her, and I keep my promises." Alexander looked at this kid, bleeding, exhausted, covered in dirt, holding plants and talking about folk medicine, and every instinct said this was insane. But then he thought, my daughter is dying in 6 hours. Every doctor said there's nothing left to try. What do I have to lose? "What's your name?" Alexander asked quietly. "Isaiah. Isaiah Washington." "Isaiah, my daughter's on the 8th floor. Come with me." Actually, let me tell you what was going through Alexander's mind in that moment. Because it wasn't hope. It was desperation. And sometimes, desperation is the only thing that can make us listen to truths we've been ignoring our whole lives. In the elevator, Miguel spoke up for the first time. "Mr. Sterling, I lost my daughter to the same disease 5 years ago. I know what you're feeling right now. I know what it's like to watch your child die and feel helpless. Isaiah is giving you something I never got. A chance. Please don't waste it." Alexander looked at Miguel, saw the pain in his eyes, the shared experience of loss. "How old was she?" 7. "Her name was Maria." Miguel's voice shook. "We tried everything we could afford. It wasn't enough." The elevator doors opened on the 8th floor. Nurses stared as this strange group walked past. A billionaire, a homeless kid, a truck driver, and a trail of blood and dirt on the pristine hospital floor. They reached Victoria's room. Through the window, Alexander could see his daughter barely conscious, surrounded by machines that were keeping her alive moment by moment. Dr. Patricia Morgan came out of the room, her eyes red from crying. "Alexander, I'm so sorry. Her kidneys have completely failed. Her liver function is at 12%. We're keeping her comfortable, but..." "How long?" Alexander asked. 4 hours, maybe 5. I don't think she'll see sunrise." Isaiah pushed forward. Then we don't have time to argue. This is angel's breath. My grandmother's journal says it has to be prepared specifically, given with pure intention, and— Wait! Dr. Morgan stared at the plant, her eyes going wide. Angel's breath? Silene angelicus? That's impossible. That plant has been extinct for— It's not extinct. It's just rare. And nobody looks for it because you can't patent it. Isaiah held the doctor's gaze. My grandmother's grandmother used this medicine. It's been passed down through our family for generations. It works. You just have to believe it will work. Dr. Morgan took the plant with shaking hands. I studied this in medical school. There were papers from the 1950s showing it had remarkable properties, but pharmaceutical companies abandoned research because they couldn't patent a naturally occurring plant. The knowledge was lost. It wasn't lost, Isaiah interrupted. It was ignored, because healing people isn't profitable if you can't control who gets healed. What Dr. Morgan said next would determine if Isaiah's impossible journey meant anything at all, or if Victoria would die while they argued about protocols and procedures. I can't administer an unproven, unstudied treatment without approval, Dr. Morgan said. My medical license, the hospital's liability, the legal ramifications. My daughter is dying, Alexander shouted. She has 4 hours. You just said every approved treatment has failed. What's the worst that can happen? She dies? She's dying anyway. The worst that can happen, a new voice interrupted, is we get sued into oblivion. Everyone turned. 3 men in expensive suits, lawyers from Sterling Pharmaceutical, walked up looking grim. Mr. Sterling, as your company's legal counsel, we strongly advise against this. If you allow an unproven folk remedy to be administered and it fails, or worse, causes additional suffering, your company will face lawsuits, your reputation will be destroyed, and every treatment we currently manufacture will be questioned. I don't care about the company, Alexander said. You should care. If this goes wrong, Sterling Pharmaceutical could be destroyed. Thousands of employees. Millions of patients who depend on our medications, all gone because you made an emotional decision based on hope rather than science. Isaiah stepped forward. Science? Your science is letting an 8-year-old girl die. My grandmother's science, passed down through generations of healers, could save her, but you won't even try because you can't make money from it. Mr. Sterling, another lawyer said, we cannot in good conscience advise. Then leave, Alexander said quietly. All of you. Leave now. Alexander, if you do this— Get out! Alexander roared. My daughter is dying and you're talking about money! Get out of this hospital, you're all fired, every single one of you! In exactly 90 seconds, Alexander Sterling would make the decision that would either save his daughter's life or destroy everything he'd built. But first, one more person needed to be heard from. Alexander. Catherine Sterling, Victoria's mother and Alexander's ex-wife, stood in the doorway. She'd been sitting with Victoria, holding their daughter's hand as she slipped away. Catherine, Give her the treatment, Catherine said, her voice fierce despite her tears. I don't care about your company. I don't care about lawsuits. I don't care about anything except our daughter. If there's even a 1% chance this works, we take it. We take it now. She walked up to Isaiah and took his hands. Thank you. Whatever happens, thank you for trying when everyone else gave up. Alexander looked at his dying daughter through the window, at the lawyers who cared more about liability than life, at Dr. Morgan, who wanted to help but was trapped by rules, at Isaiah, who'd risked everything for a child he didn't even know. Dr. Morgan, Alexander said, his voice steady now. I'm giving you a direct order as Victoria's father and as your employer. Administer the treatment. I'll sign whatever papers you need. If anyone comes after you legally, I'll protect you. If this destroys my company, so be it. Some things are more important than money. He looked at the lawyers. And if Sterling Pharmaceutical valued profits over a cure that could save lives like my daughter's, then it deserves to be destroyed. Dr. Morgan nodded, tears in her eyes. I need Isaiah's grandmother's journal, and Isaiah, I need you here. You know this medicine better than I do. Would you destroy everything you'd built if it was the only way to save someone you loved? Isaiah and Dr. Morgan prepared the angel's breath treatment exactly as Grandma Rose's journal instructed. The plant had to be crushed with pure water, filtered through silk cloth, and given with pure intention and love. What does that mean, pure intention? Dr. Morgan asked. It means you can't just give it like medicine, Isaiah explained, his grandmother's words coming back to him. You have to believe it will work. You have to give it with love, not just duty. That's why pharmaceutical companies could never make this work. They were trying to bottle it, patent it, turn it into something they could sell. But healing isn't about selling. It's about caring. They brought the treatment into Victoria's room. She was barely conscious, her breathing shallow, her skin gray. Isaiah sat beside her bed and took her hand. Victoria, it's me. Isaiah, I promised I'd come back. I promised I'd fight for you. And I did. Now you have to keep fighting too. Victoria's eyes fluttered open, unfocused. Isaiah? You came back? I walked 100 miles, climbed mountains, faced wild dogs, and almost fell off a cliff. Of course I came back. I made you a promise. Catherine was crying. Alexander stood with his hand over his mouth, unable to speak. Dr. Morgan administered the angel's breath treatment, while Isaiah held Victoria's hand and whispered encouragement. Miguel stood in the doorway, tears streaming down his face, thinking about his daughter Maria. Then they waited. Nothing happened. 1 hour passed. Victoria's vitals stayed the same, terrible, barely alive, dying by degrees. 2 hours passed. The heart monitor showed the same weak rhythm. 3 hours passed. Nurses came in to check, shaking their heads sadly. It's not working, one of the lawyers said, still lurking in the hallway. We need to prepare for— Get out, Alexander said without even looking at him. 4 hours passed. Dawn light started coming through the windows. Isaiah sat holding Victoria's hand, crying silently. He'd failed. He'd done the impossible, and it hadn't been enough. Victoria was still dying. But sometimes miracles don't happen on our timeline. Sometimes they happen exactly when we've given up hope. What happened at hour 6 would shock everyone in that room. Alexander sat with his head in his hands, Catherine beside him, both of them watching their daughter slip away despite everything. Isaiah had fallen asleep in the chair, his hand still holding Victoria's, completely exhausted after 3 days of the impossible. Miguel stood watch by the door, refusing to leave. The sun rose fully, golden light filling the room. And then Victoria's heart monitor changed rhythm. Dr. Morgan's head snapped up. Wait, look at her oxygen levels. They're rising? Everyone crowded around the monitors. Victoria's blood oxygen, which had been at 72%, climbed to 75%, then 78%, then 82%. Her kidney function, Dr. Morgan whispered, staring at the screen. It's improving. Her liver enzymes are dropping. This is impossible. Wake up, Isaiah, Catherine said. He needs to see this. Someone shook Isaiah awake. He looked at the monitors, confused, then his eyes went wide. Is she? Look, Dr. Morgan said, pointing to Victoria's face. Color was returning to her skin. Her breathing was deeper, stronger. Her eyes moved behind her closed lids. REM sleep, the first real sleep she'd had in weeks. The angel's breath is working, Dr. Morgan said, her voice full of wonder. It's actually working. Her body is healing. I've never seen anything like this. It's like watching someone reverse dying in real time. Alexander fell to his knees beside Victoria's bed, sobbing. Catherine wrapped her arms around both of them. Miguel stood in the doorway crying, thinking about his Maria, hoping that somehow she knew she'd help save another little girl, and Isaiah just sat there, holding Victoria's hand, too exhausted and relieved to do anything but smile. Actually, let me tell you what Victoria said when she finally woke up, because her first words would change everything about how this family understood life, death, and what really matters. 6 hours after the treatment, Victoria's eyes opened, truly opened, clear and focused, for the first time in days. She looked around at all the crying adults, confused. Then she saw Isaiah and smiled. You came back, she whispered. You kept your promise. I told you I would, Isaiah said, squeezing her hand gently. Victoria looked at her mother, her father, then back at Isaiah. Everyone kept saying I was going to die, that there was no hope. But you believed there was hope. Why? Isaiah thought about his grandmother, about the 100-mile walk, about the cliff and the wild dogs and the moments he wanted to give up. Because giving up is easy, Isaiah said. And because you deserved someone to fight for you the way I wish someone had fought for my grandma." Victoria smiled. Then she said something that would echo in Alexander Sterling's mind for the rest of his life. "Isaiah gave me medicine from a plant. What did it cost?" "Nothing," Isaiah said. "It was free, growing in the forest, waiting for someone to find it." Victoria looked at her father. "Daddy, you spent all that money, millions and millions, and what saved me didn't cost anything at all. It just needed someone brave enough to go get it." Alexander Sterling, billionaire pharmaceutical CEO, stared at his 8-year-old daughter and realized she'd just taught him a lesson more valuable than his entire fortune. What Alexander Sterling did over the next 6 months would transform not just his company but healthcare for thousands of people who'd been told there was no hope. But it started with one question to Isaiah. 2 weeks later, Victoria was home, recovering, getting stronger every day. Isaiah stayed at the Sterling mansion, not as a charity case, but as Victoria's friend, the person who'd saved her life. But Isaiah was uncomfortable. The mansion was huge and empty. He missed the streets where he knew everyone. He missed feeling useful instead of like someone's project. One morning he found Alexander in his study, staring at his grandmother's journal that Isaiah had lent him. "Your grandmother was remarkable," Alexander said. "This journal, there are treatments in here for dozens of conditions that pharmaceutical companies abandoned because they weren't profitable enough. Treatments that could help thousands of people." "I know," Isaiah said. "That's what made her so angry before she died. She said the system cared more about money than healing." Alexander looked at Isaiah for a long moment. "What if we change that?" "How?" "You're one person. I'm one person with a pharmaceutical company, billions of dollars, and a daughter who's alive because of folk medicine that I'd been taught to dismiss as primitive. What if Sterling Pharmaceuticals stopped chasing patents and started actually healing people?" Isaiah stared at him. "You're serious?" "Your grandmother saved my daughter's life. The least I can do is make sure her knowledge doesn't die with her. Will you help me? I need someone who understands this medicine, who knows what communities like yours need." What Isaiah said next would begin a transformation that would ripple across the entire medical industry. But it would also make powerful enemies who believed medicine should be profitable, not accessible. "I'll help," Isaiah said, "but on one condition. This isn't about making you feel better about being rich while people like my grandma died. This is about actually changing things, really changing things." "Tell me what that looks like," Alexander said. "It looks like making Angel's breath available to everyone with Sterling-Meyer syndrome, not just people who can afford it. It looks like funding research into other plants my grandma wrote about. It looks like hiring healers from communities you've ignored. It looks like admitting that pharmaceutical companies have been wrong about a lot of things." Alexander took a deep breath. "That will make me enemies. My own company will fight me. Other pharmaceutical companies will say I'm destroying the industry." "Good," Isaiah said fiercely. "The industry needs to be destroyed if it lets little girls die because their families aren't rich enough." Alexander smiled, a real smile, for the first time in years. "Then let's destroy it together." "Wait, because what happened at the press conference Alexander called would shock the medical world and start a revolution in healthcare. But it would also put Isaiah, Victoria, and the entire Sterling family in danger from people who wanted things to stay exactly as they were." Alexander Sterling stood in front of cameras 2 months after Victoria's recovery and said words that would be replayed millions of times. "8 weeks ago, my daughter was dying. Every treatment we tried failed. Then a 12-year-old homeless boy walked 100 miles to find a cure that pharmaceutical companies, including mine, had abandoned because it couldn't be patented. That plant saved my daughter's life, and I have to ask, how many other cures are we ignoring because they're not profitable?" The press exploded with questions. Alexander held up his hand. "Sterling Pharmaceutical is announcing a new division, the Rose Washington Folk Medicine Research Institute, named after the healer who taught us all this lesson. We will research traditional medicines, work with community healers, and make any discoveries available at cost, not for profit." "Mr. Sterling," a reporter shouted, "you're essentially saying pharmaceutical companies have been wrong." "I'm saying we've been incomplete. We've chased patents instead of healing. We've valued profit over people. My daughter almost died because of that system, and we're going to change it." Isaiah sat next to Victoria in the audience, both of them watching Alexander speak. Victoria squeezed Isaiah's hand. "You did this," she whispered. "You saved me, and now Daddy's going to save other people too." "We did this," Isaiah corrected. "You fought, I walked, your dad listened, Miguel drove, Dr. Morgan believed, Officer Martinez broke the rules. We all did it together." Do you believe one person can change a broken system? Or does it take a community of people who refuse to accept that this is just how things are? 6 months after Victoria's recovery, Isaiah took her to visit his grandmother's grave for the first time. "Grandma Rose," Isaiah said, kneeling by the simple headstone. "This is Victoria, the girl I told you I was going to save. I kept my promise." Victoria placed an angel's breath plant on the grave. They'd started growing them in a greenhouse, hundreds of plants, soon to be thousands, available to anyone who needed them. "Thank you," Victoria said to the headstone. "Your grandson is the bravest person I know, and your medicine saved my life." Alexander, Catherine, and Miguel stood back, giving the children space. Miguel had been hired as the community outreach director for the Rose Washington Institute. Officer Martinez had been promoted for her quick thinking. Dr. Morgan was leading the research team. "Do you think your grandma would be proud?" Victoria asked Isaiah. "I think she'd say I still have work to do," Isaiah answered. "We've only helped a few hundred people so far. There are thousands more who need help, millions maybe." "Then we'll help them," Victoria said with simple certainty. Together, they planted an angel's breath plant next to the headstone, its silver leaves glowing in the sunset. The story ends 1 year after Victoria's recovery. Isaiah and Victoria stand on the roof of City General Hospital, watching the sunrise together. "Do you remember when I first snuck into your room?" Isaiah asks. "I remember thinking you were crazy," Victoria says with a smile. "Walking 100 miles for someone you didn't even know." "I knew enough," Isaiah says. "I knew you didn't deserve to die just because of some stupid disease. Nobody deserves that." Victoria points to a new building going up across the street. "Is that it?" "Yeah. The Rose Washington Free Medical Clinic. Opens next month. Free treatment for anyone who can't afford it. Your dad's funding it completely." "Our dad," Victoria corrects. "He asked if you wanted to be adopted last week. Did you answer yet?" Isaiah is quiet for a moment. "I don't need him to adopt me to know I'm part of this family, but yeah, I said yes. Your grandma would have liked having another grandson." They watched the sun rise over the city. This impossible family built from tragedy and miracles and a 100-mile walk that nobody thought a 12-year-old could complete. "Isaiah?" Victoria asks. "Do you think there are other kids out there like you? Who know about cures that nobody believes in?" "I know there are," Isaiah says. "That's why we're building that medical school. So kids like me can teach doctors like Dr. Morgan what our grandmas and grandpas knew. So the next time someone's dying, we don't have to walk 100 miles. The cure will already be there, waiting." Victoria takes his hand. "Promise me something?" "Anything. Promise me we'll never forget that the best things in life don't cost anything. The angel's breath was free. Miguel's help was free. Officer Martinez's risk was free. Your bravery was free. Love is free. Don't let us turn into people who forget that." Isaiah squeezes her hand. "I promise, we'll never forget." 1 year after Victoria's recovery, the Angel's Breath treatment has saved 847 people with Sterling-Meyer syndrome. The Rose Washington Institute has identified 23 other traditional medicines that show promise for conditions modern medicine has given up on. Isaiah Washington, now 13, speaks at medical schools and conferences about the value of traditional healing knowledge. He still splits his time between the Sterling family and the community center he helped build in his old neighborhood. Victoria Sterling, now 9, is healthy, active, and volunteers every weekend at the Rose Washington Free Medical Clinic with her brother Isaiah. Sometimes the impossible is only impossible until someone brave enough, or desperate enough, or loving enough tries anyway. This story is dedicated to every healer whose knowledge has been dismissed, every family told there's no hope, and every child who believes miracles are still possible. If you enjoy this story, please like, share, and subscribe for more.